the big All-State Conference.
Well, you cracked at the top of the show. You are so out there with it. Okay.
The big All-State Conference, or the All-State 12 Conference. Apparently that's the clubhouse leader, because now we've entered the very weird world of sponsored conferences.
Sure.
Per reports from Yahoo Sports, from our friend Brett McMurphy over at Action Network, it sounds as if, your boy Brett Yormark,
my boy,
continuing to build on the Taco Bell Cantina Conference,
Yeah.
now considering changing the name of the conference for a cash infusion reportedly between $30 and $50 million. Hello, I'm Ty. He is Dan. Welcome back to the show. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. Does that increase the likelihood of Dennis Haysbert, a.k.a. president? I don't think he's the All-State spokesperson anymore. Is it the Chaos? Is that what All-State is now? I'm putting you on the spot right now.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
They got the duck. They have the duck.
No, that's something else. Isn't it? Come on, Ty.
Aflac. That's Aflac.
That's Aflac.
They do the trivia questions.
Right. I think Allstate is like the Chaos. It's Dean Winters.
Okay.
Mayhem. Chaos, mayhem, whatever. All I'm saying is Dennis Haysbert, is he alive? Let's verify.
He is alive.
Okay. He has affiliation, so maybe we get some of that. The Good Hands Conference. You'll get anything you want, Ty. You can get creative with this. Hey, sorry for the quick interruption, but it'd be incredible if you considered subscribing to the Solid Verbal YouTube channel right down below. Explain to the people. Let's back up a little bit. So this is who reporting, who else possibly entertaining or pursuing, for what reason, and what do we think?
What do we think? Well, let's start at the very top. Hit follow, hit subscribe, wherever it is you get your college football podcasts. We'd love to have you aboard here in the Verballerhood as we make the turn definitively into the college football preseason and start doing previews and all of the content to get you up to speed in the month of July and August as the season gets a little bit bigger in the window. You don't want to miss any of those episodes. So wherever it is you find your college football content of choice, hit follow, hit subscribe. You can also find us out on social media and, of course, on our Patreon at verballers.com. Yes. So to answer your specific question.
Yes.
We haven't done a news show in a while. This is kind of a news show, and we're focused on
I thought you were going to talk about Dennis Haysbert. Sorry. I thought you were going to say Pedro Serrano, iconic. President David Palmer, iconic. And I didn't know where you're going with that. Continue.
Where I'm going with this is we're going to focus on one particular news subject for the moment.
Okay.
I'll save my voice for the season. I won't go high again. But this is sort of breaking as of the end of last week, where Yahoo Sports, in addition to our friend Brett McMurphy, reportedly the Big 12 is entertaining some offers for conference naming rights. This is now a thing. Everybody is looking for additional sources of revenue because the arms race is about money. For as much as we hate that, that is just sort of the state of being in college football. So the Big 12, news out there that All-State and the Big 12 reportedly in deep discussions about, as I said earlier, $30 to $50 million per year in naming rights. We can talk a little bit more about how that makes us feel. I also saw that Conference USA potentially negotiating with Globe Life, which would be great for this show because we'd call it Globe A Life. We'd have to.
Mm-hmm, of course.
It sounds as if, as reported, the majority of the 10 conferences that are out there are all looking at various naming rights, new ways to infuse their respective leagues with cash. This, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your perspective, and I'm sure we'll get into that, is the next step towards an infusion of private equity, as it is known in
Correct.
College football. Now, these are direct sponsorships, but there were also reports that I think it was some Swiss venture capitalist firm or some Swiss form of private equity looking at investing a much more sizable sum in the Big 12 as well. These are conversations we unfortunately need to have. So what we're going to do in this episode is not just talk through what that means to us, what that means to college football. We have also done some brainstorming, some advanced scouting, if you will, and thought through some other sponsorships that we believe need to be explored tongue in cheek.
Of course. Of course. We have the answers, right? We're here as business consultants, Ty. Is that not what this show is? Have we not been doing business consulting for all these years we've recorded the show? That's the impression I'm under.
To be clear, we needed to hire somebody to help us with our own business consulting because we are not good at this. Full disclaimer, do not take our advice on any of these business matters.
Sure.
But we did our best, yes.
Okay, so how do you feel about this is not new to sports. Wasn't the Premier League, it was like Barclays was the title sponsor for a good long time, and now I'm sure they're some sort of sponsor, but it was like in the title. It was the Barclays whatever Premier League. I don't know what I'm talking about, but that sounds right, Ty?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So we've had entire sports be sponsored. We've had, I think ABC aired the Dana Carvey show, and it was like 1 week it was the Mug root beer. Now, that was a goof, and that was great. I think we had a Taco Bell. They sold the final episode to a local restaurant in New York. It was the Szechuan Dynasty Dana Carvey show. So, yes, it is hilarious if done the right way and if everybody's sort of in on the goof. But there is something, depending on how they name it, that we accept when it's the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl or like the Vizio Rose Bowl, right? That's sort of long been the situation with our bowl postseason situations, that we accept it. And sometimes it's worked in artfully, the Pop-Tarts Bowl, where everybody's in on the goof, everybody's having a good time with it, and it's fine. But there is something a little bit, I don't know, corny? Is that an okay word depending on how it rolls out? Because it's going to happen, right? We have logos on NBA uniforms. We've had logos on, high level soccer, football uniforms forever. But there is something about schools being themselves and conferences being themselves brands where it just feels stacking in a little ways, I guess, that it does feel corny, and we know where the sport has arrived to. And I suppose we all kind of felt that this was inevitable, even if we don't like the feel of it. But is that the right word? Is there another word you would use to describe the feel of renaming a conference after a sponsor, or including a brand in the conference title, or the hope that a brand would have that we would all say it's the All-State Big 12 instead of just the Big 12? Is there a different word other than corny that feels more appropriate?
I don't know if there is a word, but the two things that come to mind for me are when you scroll all the way to the bottom of an article you're reading online and you see the sponsored links.
Yes.
I get that vibe from this. Yeah. I also get the vibe, frankly, like I just logged on to LinkedIn, because that's all LinkedIn is anymore at this point. Mm-hmm. It's just all kind of sponsored or AI generated. It cheapens it.
Yeah.
It cheapens it a little bit. I think we're very used to sponsors in sports playing an outsized role. You mentioned the Barclays Premier League.
Yeah.
Okay. Brett Yormark's background before he was doing stuff with Rock Nation and Jay-Z was involved with NASCAR and the Nextel Cup, or whatever the trophy, whatever the season-long pursuit is called. He was involved in kind of incorporating Nextel, other sponsors into that chase. That feels okay to me. In golf, there's a FedEx Cup, which everyone is competing for. It feels differently when you're naming the trophy after a sponsor, or when you're naming just the league presented by a sponsor, as opposed to renaming the whole damn league.
The All-State 12. Yeah.
And I think that, to me, is where the corniness kicks in.
Yeah.
I don't care about the logos on the field. I think we're used to that. I don't care about
a natural
badges
extension.
Yeah, I don't care about the badges on the jerseys. I'm okay. We're not used to that as much in college football, but we're used to that everywhere else. Who cares?
Mm-hmm.
We're used to the logos on the field as it relates to championship games in particular. It's not that big a departure from what we're already used to.
Yeah.
But there is so much change in college football. Dog, if I got to rename a conference in all of my notes now and add that to the growing Rolodex of flashcards that I have created to memorize the other changes in this sport in 2024 and beyond, that to me just feels like, oh my God, we have steered too much now into this eventuality.
Yeah, there is a little bit, again, if the names are changed, and I don't know how you feel about this, and this is all sort of part of the modern world, and I think we all sort of accept that this is the Big 12 chasing other conferences, whatever happens with the ACC, whatever happens with G5 conferences, with the inclusion of private equity possibility, it's chasing to have a, if not similar, but in the region of a bottom line that is comparable to what the Big Ten and the SEC will have. But it's also in response to the future of sharing revenue with players and sort of getting creative with revenue streams as schools are looking to not just thrive, but really survive in a lot of these instances. And so you understand why schools are feeling the heat and the need to get creative. I don't know how you feel about this, where I accept conferences, even though these conferences are changing or going away in the instance of the Pac-12. But the corniness of it all is, I don't know if you've ever followed anybody on Instagram that you're friendly with. And you're like, cool, wonder what's going on with their life. What's going on with their travels? And then one day they're like, hey, everybody, real quick, I want to talk to you about Diet Mountain Dew. And you're just like, I don't know if this is why I'm here. I don't know if this feels like a transactional relationship in the way that it has just become. I want to tell you about how great it is to fly on Allegiant Air in 2024.
Not a sponsor, could be.
Not a sponsor, and I suspect I would not have fun flying on Allegiant Air. I've flown on some of the other budget
I've heard
airlines.
it's like riding a lawn chair in the sky.
Yeah. So I don't think people are specifically like huge Big 12 fans or Conference USA fans, even if they enjoy the teams in the conference, and maybe it feels like it's cheapening it, but it definitely like changes the relationship to the sport in a weird way, even if it's in a minor way. There is that new transactional ick factor to me.
Oh yeah, there's a definite ick factor. So I guess what I should say, and I don't want to confuse the two things.
Yeah.
There is a very big
I
difference.
also mute those people from my life if they start like trying in that way on Instagram, where I'm just like, you're my cousin. Why are you selling me sunscreen? Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
There is a difference between the big sponsorship
Yeah.
and the private equity. They are not one in
Correct.
the same. And I may have put the two together in a way that I shouldn't. We can talk about the private equity thing in a second, but the sponsorship aspect of this, it is really just, as you said, it's signaling more of an openness from college football leagues and conferences and teams to welcome this money in a way that they haven't before. The NCAA is kind of loosening its grip on what's allowable versus what isn't. How does it make me feel? It does. It just cheapens it, I think is the only way I could put it.
Sure.
It's not going to change the on-field product, but if I am watching a highlight show and let's go to the All-State 12, that just,
right.
I don't know. Like, that is not something I'm ever really going to get used to.
And let's be clear, from our perspective, we root for haves. Your alma mater is a have. Your team that you grew up rooting for in Notre Dame is a have. The school that I root for, Oregon, is most certainly a have. So our perspectives are a little bit skewed on this. And if you root for a school in the Big 12, or you root for a G5 school, you root for a school that's looking to survive and get creative, then I think you should, on a certain level, welcome this. That this is your school, your conference, doing everything it can, finding every single penny, dime, nickel in the couch cushions to make rent. I get that. And you got to, on a certain level, you have to applaud it. But from a 10,000-foot view, it feels like a patch on a leaky boat. Like, this is not really a seaworthy long-term plan, it seems. And so that's why I think people are pointing to big changes imminently in the way college football is structured. But yeah, there is the immediate reaction. I mean, your generation has been around a lot longer with this sport.
Sure.
What are you, 18 months older than me?
Yeah.
And yeah, like, obviously there have been huge changes in the way athletes are getting paid and can move around the sport and coaches leaving and all that. Like, we've gotten used to dramatic changes, and we'll get used to this if it's done, hopefully, in as artful a way as possible. And sidebar here, Ty, support Solid Verbal's sponsors. Whatever socks we are telling you are good socks are great socks.
Correct.
And so we've gotten used to it. You're listening to a podcast. You've gotten used to TV shows, podcasts, whatever, selling you things, hopefully in a nice way. But I think over time, we just sort of expected the product to be, you know, a halfback dive a goal line fade, whatever. And it just has so dramatically become a TV show now with product placement where it has, I'm trying to draw all these comparisons. I keep thinking about Garth and Wayne selling Pepsi and Doritos and everything. Like, do it in like a funny, weird way, and you will capture our hearts. I promise you.
So I mentioned this earlier, and this is actually a good segue into the private equity thing.
Yeah.
Which I know people are listening to this in their cars. Please don't let your eyes glaze over. Be safe on the roads. This is not the best conversation for an audio only format or even a video format.
But if you are watching a video, Ty looks particularly handsome today. Continue.
I do. We're both wearing blue.
Yeah, of course.
Sort of matching here. So I botched the country. It's Luxembourg, not Switzerland.
Oh, okay.
On the table is a possible cash infusion of $800 million to $1 billion in exchange for a 15 to 20% stake in the league. A portion of that money would go to the 16 conference members, and the partnership would give the conference access to CVC's investment services and clients. Don't we all want that?
Yeah.
I could see the argument if you are in the Big 12, if you're in the ACC. It's part of why I think Florida State has looked into this as well. I can see the argument from a school standpoint of we feel like we need to play catch up. We need to play catch up any way possible. We need to investigate these other revenue streams. We need more money so that we can go toe to toe with the likes of Ohio State, Michigan, Alabama, teams in bigger conferences that are making more money. Now, I think at last check, the SEC is making about double the money of the schools in the Big 12. So there is a gap there, and the gap is growing. I think each time we talk about this, it feels like it gets a little bit bigger.
Certainly.
I can understand looking at this and saying, well, hey, if we can get an extra $20 million a year out of this agreement, if we can get a little bit more per year out of this agreement, not only does that narrow the gap, but it does so in a way that hopefully is relatively seamless. It's just sort of like a cash infusion that we are to use to better our football program. I think the argument against this is obviously what happens as a result of the investment. What does that mean? There are horror stories. This is not exclusive to private equity, nor is it always the case with private equity, but there are plenty of horror stories about the outside money coming in, those folks just wanting a return on the investment.
Yeah.
And as such, the whole thing sort of is submarined, which we don't want to see. It already feels like part of that has happened,
right,
by virtue of the other things.
That the true value was in the real estate that the business sat on and the brand strength of the business, not the actual business. And Toys R Us and Red Lobster, the stories have been written that like stripped for their parts essentially, and these were good businesses that were looked at as cash cows that could be flipped.
Now, neither you nor I are too steeped with knowledge in this world. We are mostly just reading off articles. Don't let anyone try to tell you otherwise.
Were you not a Bloomberg reporter for 27 years?
No.
Okay.
I can barely add.
Okay.
But how does this make you feel?
From what I know, once again, it's return on investment, it's streamlining, it's making things more efficient, it's cost going down, revenue going up, and then sell it to somebody else. So I don't know who that somebody else is, where it keeps going up, where like the Big 12 is going to be sold to like Madrigal, Electromotive, whatever, from, one of those big nameless, faceless German or Dutch companies that apparently owns everything. And now they're going to add the Big 12 to their portfolio at a great deal. What are they going to slash? What are they going to cut? How are they going to maximize revenue? I have no idea. That I'm definitely not smart enough to know. Is it cutting sports? Is it cutting staff? Is it capping coaching salaries? There's all sorts of things you can do to make your expenses go down and feel like you can be more efficient with your investment. So it just makes me feel that if you need to turn to this in 2024, that your entity is not necessarily in a strong place. And whether or not that's true of the Big 12, because there's a lot to love about the Big 12. There's a lot to love about a lot of these conferences. Does every conference have to be the Big 10 or SEC? Fans of teams in those conferences say this is the only way we can survive, is we need that infusion of cash to sort of match things or approach things. But on the same token, sometimes there's a reason Texas is much more valuable than Kansas State. Sometimes there's a reason that Oregon or USC or Washington or UCLA are much more valuable entities than Washington State or Texas Tech, whatever. And that we have to sort of bring in what a lot of people consider to be a little bit of funny money to sort of short-term boost things. It almost feels like we're prolonging the inevitable, and that everything doesn't need to be equal, and everybody doesn't have to be on equal standing, and we're sort of doing these things for status and the wrong reasons.
What I worry about, because I'd be lying if I said I understand the private equity. I mean,
sure.
What I understand about it is
I think the bones we have right.
Well, the bones we have right. And the biggest bone is this. If you invest $800 to $1 billion in anything, you want some kind of return. You don't just want to give that to somebody
it's not
because
a charity.
you're not feeling charitable. You want some of that back. How you make that back? Email us solidverbal@gmail.com.
Right.
I don't know how that would work. I have no idea.
There are, I think, monumental strings attached and fees attached, and it's quite easy. I from what I know, to make money consistently in that world.
Great.
Yeah.
My concern is not the money side of it.
Right.
All right. I understand. We know what that is about. My concern is with that investment comes an expectation of influence.
Mm-hmm.
An expectation of, hey, I own a lot of this thing now.
We're bringing in this guy or gal to run things now.
Yeah, I should have some element of control over this entity. We've seen that
ESPN
time and again,
and Fox. Yeah.
Tale as old as time. And I know just from listening to the people who have written into us on our Discord, on our Patreon, the entire Verballerhood, the sentiment that we have picked up over the last 2 years is, by and large, people are willing to roll with the punches, but everybody's very leery about this becoming a money thing.
Right.
A money conversation with the conference realignment, with NIL, transfer portal, all these things that we've talked about. Money is kind of like the backbone behind it.
Yeah.
Everybody's very leery about that. I fear that if this is something, an eventuality that we see happen in college football, that not only will the mask be completely ripped off that this is about money,
yeah,
but it's going to be very obvious that every decision that is made for the Big 12, whoever, is driven solely by money and not by the charm of college
competitive
football.
Right. Yeah.
Not by the aspects of this sport that we hold dear.
Right.
It is truly at that point going to be cost-benefit analysis, return on investment. Use whatever three-letter acronym you see fit. But that is where this thing goes, and I think then it really feels different than it does now, if that makes sense.
Does this mean Mitt Romney is going to be Texas Tech's new defensive coordinator because he has paid $14 million because he wants to be a Big 12 head coach? He wants, there's some sort of sultan from somewhere in the Middle East who is now Kansas. He buys out Lance Leipold, and he himself installs himself as the new head coach of Kansas football because the price is right.
I mean, if you want to use the Premier League as a go-by, it is not exactly the same.
Right.
But the Premier League of English football has seen a huge influx in international money that has come in and bought out some programs like Man City. You've seen it with Chelsea. I mean, there's a whole Newcastle United. There have been a whole laundry list of teams. Wrexham.
Yeah.
Wrexham, another example. This infusion of cash and how it can change things. In many cases, it has for the better, but we have not really seen that model deployed in college football. And it is not exactly the same business model, not by a long shot. And so I just worry about that growing influence among the financial class. I'm sure they're all, well, not all, but many are good people.
Right.
I just worry about somebody swooping in with a ton of money, buying out coaches, changing the landscape, operating more from the standpoint of how does this affect my pocketbook and less from the standpoint of should we be doing this? Is this good for the sport?
Will you commit today, June 17th, 2024, to going along with me to see Arizona State, UCF, and Riyadh. Will you? By the way, if we start doing sponsorship reads for Turkish Airlines, or any one of those Premier League sponsors, we have been compromised.
We have been compromised.
We have been compromised. And
we're done, man. We're done.
Yeah, it's obviously a cartoonish path that we just walked down, but not fully. When you start inviting that kind of money into the sport, you get weird endings. And I don't know. I am hopeful that this is us freaking out over nothing, or not really freaking out, but sort of going down this path over nothing. And I think it's more of an alarm of where the sport is, that these are the solutions that are being looked at, than anything else. And so I think ultimately it's probably not going to be a huge deal. And, things are being explored. Maybe there's some infusion of whatever, but I am hopeful that it is not a dramatic change. Though we just lost the Pac-12 for silly reasons. So I don't know. I could see it getting weird. I think this all ends with how we all know this is going to end, with a smaller sport featuring halves and some kind of halves, and things being splintered below that.
I'm worried about rising influence from the financial class.
Sure.
And how that could further alter the landscape as we know it. I mean, we have had this conversation now about a super league for a good 2 years running. We get questions every time we do a mailbag about the Super League. Put 40 teams together. We got one from board member Ryan out on Patreon,
nice,
for ballers.com, that we kind of addressed in part 2 of our mailbag episode last week. You can go back and listen to that. And I think my answer all along the way has been, well, this doesn't benefit the SEC or the Big Ten, really.
Yeah.
Or really any conference. Like they all I think have gotten to the point now where at least the Big 12, Big Ten, and SEC, the status quo is okay, and they're willing to work with that. The ACC, it's its own tire fire at this point. But by and large, my answer to that, my retort has been, I get where you're coming from. I understand the nature of the question. I don't think it really behooves any of the people in charge of conferences to want to go in this direction. But if you start selling off chunks of a conference, the people who own those chunks may feel differently.
Sure.
So if you want a super league, this might be the quickest way to get there, by taking the outside investment from the finance guys who want to try and maximize as much profit as possible. That's what I fear.
Do you think we're at a point right now, based on NIL, portal, realignment, all of these things, potential infusion of cash, sponsorship, all sorts of stuff, centralized power in the sport already with 2 major conferences and semi-major and then G5 conference, however you want to categorize and tier up the sport. I don't believe the sport is unrecognizable, but I think in the way that you're talking, I think we could end up using that word. Like there's still something recognizable about having multiple conferences and recognizable rivalries, and even with, the new Big Ten teams, SEC teams, ACC teams, Big 12 teams, there's connection to the past in some meaningful ways, that we have bowl games that feature, SEC, new SEC opponents. We've had those recently. We've had these matchups. So Oregon, Ohio State is not a foreign matchup. We've had it in national championships, non-conference, whatever. But in the way that you're describing a super league, which seems, however you want to qualify that or quantify that, it's 52 teams, it's 48 teams, it's, some sort of new organization of the sport that really creates a wall between certain parts of the sport, that if we arrive at a point where it's unrecognizable, that's when I think we start to see meaningful collapse in attention. Even if the sport's still fun, even if, fans are still super into their teams, more broadly speaking, when a sport goes too far into that unrecognizable direction, especially one that's as old as college football, that's when I think you see meaningful dip. That's when I think you see the hubris really show its face. And That would be the word that I would use to describe it, because I firmly believe, even though West Coast guy, lost my conference, I still believe college football is recognizable. Now, you go in 12-team playoff, 14-team playoff. We'll see how we feel in December, January, with how the rhythms appear in real time. I would still make the case that the sport is recognizable, albeit very different than where it was even a decade ago. But I think in what you describe, which is not wrong, I think we can enter into that territory, and people are like, you know what? I think I'm just going to start running more 5Ks on Saturday. I think I'm just going to start learning how to quilt. I think I'm going to start learning. I'm going to increase my vertical leap. I think I'm going to start learning a new language. I think I'm going to start taking better care of my lawn. That I'm not going to watch. I'm going to watch my team, but not the second biggest game of the weekend anymore. I'm going to watch 2 windows, but not all 3. I'm going to watch 1 window where my team is playing, but not the other 2. Like, I think that's when you get into dramatic changes in fandom, appreciation, attention.
Well, what you're talking about is a slow spiral into becoming the NFL.
Or a quick one. Yeah.
Or a quick one,
Yeah.
depending on if and when this all goes down.
Mm-hmm.
I think the lifeblood of college football outside of recruiting is rivalries. It is rivalries. It is playing against your hated rival. It is beating them. It is beating them in the case of Michigan 3 times in a row and driving the other fan base crazy. That is what makes this sport tick, I think, above all else.
Yeah.
And if we start talking about things like super leagues, if we start talking about a scenario in which the top 25 teams only play each other, which wouldn't be that far off if we have the Super League conversation again.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's where they'd love to take it, I'm sure, because it would mean buku ratings on the TV side of things. Of course,
Sure.
They would want to do that. I think if we venture too close to that reality, that is when the collapse, as you put it, would start.
Noticeable dips.
If we fly a little too close to that sun in the name of money, as opposed to the charm that drew all of us in at some point to the sport,
Mm-hmm.
that's the danger zone, in
Yeah.
my view.
And
if
the NFL can't do any wrong right now, right? The NFL is so big that it can't do wrong, but we see how they've decided to expand. And so they added a 17th game, right? So teams make more money for another home game. Networks make more money selling commercials, right? It's a more valuable property with more games. Is so-and-so global, so-and-so partners, equity, whatever, going to say 12 games seems pretty cool. What if we did 14, 15? Make some more money. Another quick note, it says here you're playing Furman in week 1, but nobody watches Furman, and your gate receipts are down when you play against Furman or UT Chattanooga or whatever. So let's play Wisconsin? Let's play South Carolina there? And you start getting closer and closer to unrecognizable. And then what happens when those teams that need those games, those paycheck games to survive as an athletic department, don't get those games anymore? Because the new influence is, only schedule from this bank of 27 teams. It trickles down sadness, and it's pretty unfortunate.
If anybody would like to come on this podcast, and I am speaking directly to you, Drew Weatherford.
Sure. Former Florida State quarterback?
Former Florida State quarterback.
Yeah.
Who seems to be championing this style of investment and reportedly has given presentations to a number of different places. Somebody like that, somebody from CVC, anybody who might be involved or interested in this level of investment in college football. If any of you would like to come on this show.
Notable college football fan, Warren Buffett, if he's interested in. Go Big
Noted
Red.
Verballer.
Yeah.
Noted Verballer.
Yeah, long time Verballer.
If anybody would like to come on and give your case for why this wouldn't be a bad thing, or why these alarm bells we are sounding are unwarranted, you have an open invitation.
Sure.
solidverbal@gmail.com. We will give you as much time as you want to explain why it makes sense.
Also, if you're Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, open invite.
Open invite.
Yeah.
Always open invite.
Yeah.
But needless to say, interesting times ahead in the college football world. These conversations don't seem like they're going to go away anytime soon.
No. But here's the pivot point, Ty. We said artful. We said sort of in on the goof. We said sort of like understanding that this is different. We'll steer into this new reality and not make it weird. We as business consultants are offering our services, are we not?
We are. So mindful of the fact that it might be the All-State 12.
Mm-hmm.
Which I'm never going to get that right. We're just going to call it the Big 12 in this show if you're okay with that.
Yeah.
Unless Allstate wants to swoop in with the sponsorship, in which case, yes, we'd be compromised, but maybe make a little bit more off the podcast. We have put our heads together and come up with some other sponsorship opportunities that we think are out there.
Well, like what we like to do on the show, right? When we have a sponsor that we truly love because they've sent us whatever product, and I say, my feet are always so comfortable when I wear this sock, or when I wear this shirt, or when I drink out of this, water bottle or whatever. Like, we're not lying. It makes sense because we enjoy using their product, then we can speak about it, speak to it in a legitimate way, in an earnest way. And so we feel like if we are going to offer these opportunities, I think they're going to fit really nicely.
So with the All-State conversation
Yeah.
well underway and definitely in the public sphere, Twitter had an absolute field day with this. Twitter, X, whatever, Reddit, all of the normal hotspots for college football conversation were alive with ideas about this. The best one I saw was the Southwest Big 12.
Oh, so you can call it the Southwest Conference. That's the best.
Southwest Conference.
Yeah.
That would be the best.
Yeah.
That would be the best, hands down. I also did see that the Mac could be the Big Mac sponsored by McDonald's.
Yeah.
Those are my two favorites among some of the other options that were thrown.
I mean, Apple also with the Mac, right? That would make sense. Sure.
Yeah. Could go Apple.
Yeah.
Other suggestions, Dan? Have you given some thought to this?
I went mostly on the team level.
Okay.
So here's what I have so far, Ty. This is an ongoing whiteboard document for me.
Yeah.
I was thinking about Colorado, the identity of Colorado. We're going to start there. I have Facebook Marketplace, just right there on the field.
I have Barstool.
You have Barstool for Colorado? Barstool Sports?
Yeah.
Why?
Colorado, I feel, has adopted an edgier strategy
Mm-hmm.
to getting its name out there, to not doing things conventional. They are steering into being controversial at
Right.
times. And it seems as if they have garnered a brand new fan base for themselves.
I think Dion and Barstool have a history, right? There was some sort of deal there?
Yes,
Yeah.
I believe so.
Okay.
So that was the first thing that came to mind. But whatever it is, I think the Colorado brand at this point is definitely like separate from the mainstream,
Yeah.
a little edgy, and is okay with being controversial.
Yeah, I just have deals coming in and out. Facebook Marketplace, right? Got to pick up your wares.
Have you used it? Have you used?
I have
Facebook
not.
Market? I've used
I've perused to look for stuff, but I haven't been able to find what I'm looking for.
I've used it many times.
For selling or buying or both?
Selling.
Okay.
Yeah.
That seems
And-
really easy to use.
Never ceases to amaze me how you can post something, and provided it's not a total piece of junk,
Mm-hmm.
within 15 minutes you get a reply. It's incredible.
That's great.
Incredible.
I'm going to stay Big 12 here because Big 12 is the sort of middle of all of this. I look at what Kansas has done these past few years, getting lean, getting efficient, becoming their best selves. So I have a big old on their field Ozempic logo for Kansas football. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, look, who's the better case for getting lean, looking their best, making changes in their life? Are there side effects? Potentially, yes. Potentially there are side effects. But that's what I have with Kansas. I have that Ozempic.
So, speaking about the Big 12,
Yeah.
I did have a trivia question for you.
Okay.
This soft drink company is primed to become the second biggest, behind Coke, but ahead of Pepsi.
Behind Coke, but ahead of Pepsi. Soft drink company.
Mm-hmm.
The way you talk about this, it's probably not a soda. Is it like one of the seltzer LaCroix, Spindrift, something like that?
It's Dr. Pepper, Dan.
Oh, it is a soda. It is Dr. Pepper, okay?
Dr.
Which already
Pepper.
has a Big 12 affiliation, yeah.
I want to know what Dr. Pepper's doing. if Allstate is sort of shouldering them out here,
Oh, yeah. Where are they going to take their cash?
where's that Dr. Pepper cash going to go? Because, the Fansville thing has been effective, I guess. We talk about it on the show. People call into the reverbs about the Dr. Pepper Fansville spots.
Sure.
But where is that Dr. Pepper cash going to go?
And what do you
If
say?
not for the Big 12.
What do you say? Do you have an answer? Or are you just
I don't know.
positing a
I'm
question?
genuinely curious. I need to know the strategy because it feels like Dr. Pepper, along with Allstate, along with Chick-fil-A, like a few of the biggies that we're used to seeing when we watch games on Saturday,
Right.
I would expect Dr. Pepper to be in the running there.
Well,
I think
okay.
they're
So
based in Texas. Like,
what do you think about with Dr. Pepper? The actual like beverage, okay? So they famously, was it like 23 different ingredients or something? There's a secret
Correct.
formula. Nobody actually knows what Dr. Pepper tastes like. That's like the ongoing joke that like people like it, but they can't really pinpoint why. So who does that fit with, conference-wise or team-wise? They like it, but they don't know why. They don't.
if we're
they can't
talking
pinpoint the
about-
exact flavor.
if we're talking about variety,
Yeah.
the variety conference right now is probably the Big Ten, right?
Yeah.
Because of pulling so many teams in from the West Coast. I think from also a wink and a nod to maybe further expansion, depending on how things go.
Sure.
I think the Big Ten, more so than any conference, they sort of broke down the whole geographic barriers that we had come to accept with respect to how leagues were constructed. So I guess maybe I had the Big Ten slotted for a company like Yeti.
Okay.
Like the Big Yeti would be a fun name for a conference.
Big Yeti's pretty good. I like that.
That
It's
was sort
coast to coast. Everybody
Yeah.
could use a cooler or a tumbler or something like that. Not a sponsor, could be.
right. So whether you're needing to keep the drinks hot or cold, Yeti's got you covered.
Yeah.
And that applies pretty much across the entirety of the conference.
Right. Okay. See, I would think about like rich and chubby. Right? Rich and a little portly. That's I don't know what brand, like the Pringles 10. What spokesperson, like cartoon spokesperson, fits like rich and portly? Is the Monopoly Man chubby?
I was thinking of the Monopoly Man, yeah.
I don't know my answer. The
Uncle
Kool-Aid?
Pennybags.
Kool-Aid, rich and portly?
I don't know.
Rubenesque? I don't know what the best way to describe.
I had 84 Lumber for the Big Ten as well.
I like that.
Not a sponsor, could be.
Not a sponsor. I don't even know what that is.
For AAC, the American Conference,
Yeah.
WeatherTech.
Okay, continue.
Two things that we know about WeatherTech. If you've ever seen a commercial,
I have.
made in the United States, made in America.
Okay.
Very big on that.
Yes.
Okay. They make a good product. I've had it.
Mm-hmm.
Made in America. Also, unfortunately, given the state of college football, a bit of a floor mat. Yeah.
Sure.
It fits. American
So-
Conference, WeatherTech. Made in the USA, also a bit of a floor mat.
Losing their teams, the American, so protection from leakage.
Yep.
That's not bad. I like that. What do you have for the Pac-2?
Nothing.
Nothing?
I have nothing. They'll take whatever money they can get.
That's true. They're the
On-
what's it called? The Life Alert, right? The Life,
Life
Alert
Alert.
bracelet, Pac-2.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
What other teams do you got?
All right, here's what I have so far. I have Ole Miss swiping away its life away on Bumble, right? Not a reference to Lane Kiffin's personal life, but could be. Ole Miss, always swiping. Can we get a better left guard? Yeah. Can we get a better outside linebacker? Can we get a better number one receiver? Always swiping. Bumble presents Ole Miss football.
Isn't Bumble by women for women?
I have no idea. I've never used it.
I
Is that
believe-
what the one it is where like a guy can't
I think
message
so.
unless a woman messages
I think
him
so.
first?
Yeah.
I have no idea how it works with different kinds of relationships.
Some sort
but
of match
Yeah.
app is what you're going for.
yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Clemson's a bit of a hoarder, right? And they don't want to let people in. They're hoarding inside the house, so I have Clemson with Simply Safe. Right? They got
Former Solid Verbal sponsor.
They got former Culvers. They got to protect their way of life. And what
Yeah.
better way is all sorts of door alarms and cameras and stuff. Simply Safe for Clemson.
I have dude wipes for Iowa.
Ooh, I have an Iowa one. Continue.
I just feel like that very much is the brand. It's not like sexy. It's just very utilitarian, and it plays into this notion that Iowa's got, big honking offensive linemen and defensive linemen every year, and that's
Sure.
how they win games.
Here's what I have for Iowa. I'm taking the opposite viewpoint. For Iowa football, what I'm seeing is hope. I'm seeing what Iowa needs, what Iowa's looking for. I'm seeing the hiring of Tim Lester and changing sort of limper ways on offense. So I have Iowa football presented by Cialis, searching for explosion and fast finishes, Ty. Right there on the field, the Cialis logo.
Not a sponsor, could be.
Not a sponsor, could be. You want to go Blue Chew? I've done a Blue Chew read. I thought I did pretty well. That was on Sports Wars. But yeah, that's what I'm going for Iowa football. The need for more explosion. Go Hawks.
I have Shady Rays for the Sun Belt.
Okay.
That's a very literal. That's like not that funny,
Right.
but that actually makes sense.
What about Sunny D?
Is Sunny D still a thing?
I think so. Is it not? Sunny Delight.
The Sunny D Belt?
Yeah.
Mm.
It's just called Sunny D. It's not called Sunny Delight, I think, anymore. That's not bad.
Who should sponsor the SEC?
Okay, so how would you come to define the SEC brand right now?
The three things that I jotted down were Waffle House,
Mm-hmm.
Supercuts.
Why Supercuts?
I was thinking more Bama Bangs,
Okay.
and Southern Comfort, obviously. Because
Southern
of the name.
Comfort makes a lot of sense.
Now, I don't know if we're going to venture into alcohol as part of these sponsorships. They may be a little bit leery about that,
Right.
although a lot of places now sell alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
So that relationship is cooled.
SEC
little
owned
bit.
by Disney now.
Owned by Disney.
Yeah.
Right. So I did kind of give some thought to, could the conference be sponsored by a movie, which I think is the funniest possible outcome among all of this. Like,
Yeah.
if the SEC is sponsored by,
Toy Story 5.
yeah, Mad Max Furiosa,
Yeah.
or a Nick Cage flick or something of that nature, that's the best possible outcome for all of this.
Yeah.
But I didn't settle on a particular sponsor for the SEC. I just had those three companies or three things in mind.
I have Ohio State, and with what they've done lately, just losing important moments, right? Losing the Michigan game, lost, some bowl game. Like, they're having a really tough time with losing those important things. So I have Apple AirTags. Help
Apple
you keep
AirTag.
track.
Mm-hmm.
Apple AirTags, Ohio State. Premium brand. We're all good there. I have Illinois and Vienna beef. I just want Brett Bielema on, the 50-yard line with a hot dog gun, shooting them into the crowd. I think you get that beefy brand with, and Vienna beef I think it's the choice hot dog of, at least, it's upstate. It's Chicago dogs.
Right.
But I think that fits really nicely.
Have you ever seen the clip where the hot dog gun malfunctions and backfires right into?
The hot dog gets shot into the shooter?
Yes.
Oh, no. No, I haven't.
I'll send you this. It's marvelous. One of the best clips on the internet.
I would love to shoot a hot dog
Love a
gun
good
someday.
Love a good hot dog gun. Yeah.
I have Miami with ChatGPT. What's better than AI to make decisions on the fly? Right? Where you just ask, a machine learning bot, okay, there's this much time left. We're playing this opponent. It's this down with this yardage. What do most good teams do? Hurry up and tell me. ChatGPT. Miami football.
I am going to ask ChatGPT
Yeah.
if it can tell me what it would do in the scenario. Would it also kneel? Would it decide not to kneel?
Run. Yeah. Just on the fly, right? It's going to respond quickly. If
Yeah.
you're whoever coach is.
We need to
whichever
find the
coach.
exact scenario of this game, though,
Right.
and pump it into ChatGPT, which I can do. I won't. If you can vamp a little bit,
Sure.
we can see what it would do if given the opportunity, and if it offers any kind of wisdom
Yeah.
to the likes of Mario Cristobal.
I've never used AI or ChatGPT, so I will trust you on that front. I've got a good one for USC, Ty,
Okay.
if you'll indulge me.
Yeah.
All right. So I chose, I wrote down the exact product, Scott's Easy Seed Patch and Repair for the school that has its real turf, real grass turf, trampled and abused by opposing teams all season long. Scott's Easy, that's the letters EZ, Seed Patch and Repair. You got the end zone, your own end zone being abused, and I feel like lean into it. So I have Scott's Easy Turf Build and Repair for USC. Florida State, GoFundMe. Just right on the field there as they try to exit the ACC. If you want to talk about, there's no south, you can't fly southwest to, the want to get away thing to Tallahassee. You can go to Panama City or Jacksonville. So I didn't do that. Rocket Mortgage, looking for a new home, right? Florida State. World Trips travel insurance for when you think you're making a trip and it doesn't work out. Florida State 2023. I think all of those things make sense for the good people at Florida State.
Yes, Miami should have knelt instead of running the ball. With the game nearly won, taking a knee would have allowed them to run out the clock and secure the victory. Instead, they chose to run the ball, resulting in a fumble that allowed Georgia Tech to execute a last-second miracle play and win the game.
But can you put in like a very specific situation? Like, could you make up a situation? Like, what would a good college football coach do if their team found themselves with the ball with 2.5 minutes left, up by 4, like, will ChatGPT or whatever your AI bot of choice is, will they evaluate correct thinking?
I am doing it now.
Okay.
What would a good college football coach do if their team found themselves with the ball?
Yeah.
2.5 minutes left, up 4 points, on 4th down and
at what yard line?
From their own 48-yard line.
Yeah. Any other details needed? In a dome?
Go for it or punt.
Yeah.
Or something else.
I think this is very valuable.
In this scenario, a good college football coach would typically consider these options.
Okay.
Lists them off, right? Field position, opponent's offense, clock management, game situation. I have to read on that.
Yeah.
Based on these factors, you could either go for it, punt, or other considerations. It's listing
What are the
off.
other considerations other than going forward or punting? Okay.
Right. In some situations, it says, in some situations, a coach might consider a quick kick or a surprise kick. So they're saying maybe on 3rd down.
Got it.
Instead.
Yeah.
ChatGPT says, therefore, my decision will be to punt and rely on our defense to close out the game effectively.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. While going for it
Literally
on 4th down,
punting. Yeah.
While going for it on 4th down could extend our drive and potentially seal the game with another 1st down, the risk of turning the ball over on downs and giving the opponent a short field outweighs the potential reward, especially with only a 4-point lead.
Man, if we could simulate Mario Cristobal against a bot over the course of his Miami career, that would be fun. That would be something fun.
We'll
Okay.
have to get our IT team on that one, see what we can do.
I have Texas A&M with Fidelity because sometimes you just need the pros to manage your money and not pay and extend coaches in perpetuity.
Right.
Sometimes you need somebody to be like, actually, T-bills might make more sense than Jimbo Fisher.
Speaking of which,
yeah,
A&M very interested in the private equity. Continue.
Yeah, of course. I think A&M's okay with their cash flow behind the scenes.
Yeah. What's the price of oil? They're good.
Yeah. I think those are all. I mean, the ChatGPT one I was especially happy about. Continue.
The Mountain West is like rugged. The Mountain West is Patagonia, North Face, REI, something of that.
That's pretty good.
Of that nature, I think would fit perfectly.
Yes.
I think that's it for me as well.
Okay. I think that was an offering of really smart, well thought out suggestions.
Oh, of course. Let us know what you guys think.
Yes.
solidverbal@gmail.com. Hit us up on social media. Not just with these sponsorship pairings, but also with our conversation for the vast majority of this episode, which was the infusion of money in different ways into college football. How will it, how won't it change the sport as we know and love it? At what point does it become unrecognizable to you? We'd love to get your feedback on this. Again, solidverbal@gmail.com. You can always hit us up across social media as well. I think it's a conversation that is going to persist. I feel like the first time that this was out there, that people were talking about it, there was an assumption by some that it might just go away, that this is kind of a crazy idea.
Mm-hmm.
it's apparently not crazy enough to just go away. I think this is going to be with us now for a while, and I don't think it's long before we start seeing some of these more creative ways to infuse teams, to infuse schools, to infuse leagues with cash. I don't think it's all that far away. So just get used to it, form your opinions, and let us know where your thoughts are.
Do you think Kirk Ferentz has a price to appear in that bathtub-style Cialis commercial if it were then required in his contract with Cialis underwriting a good chunk of the Iowa football program? Just like him and Phil Parker and their individual bathtubs? Like, do you think he would not accept $2 million to appear in a Cialis commercial in a bathtub?
First off, what's your number to appear in that commercial?
Oh, my God. 100K? Nothing. 50K in catering? It would be amazing.
Kirk Ferentz. What is the number for Kirk Ferentz? I don't think he'd do it.
You think he would just quit? Yeah, at this point in his career.
If the sponsor came in and said, we're going to infuse Iowa football with $100 million
wear a bathing
in cash,
suit, yeah,
$100 million in cash, but the caveat is, Kirk, you've got to do this.
Right. If Iowa was they were in a different conference and desperately needed the money,
would he do that?
Zero chance. But my question to you is, which coach would accept the least amount of money? Because they're just like, sure, screw it, whatever.
I think it's Lane Kiffin.
Lane, yeah, of course it's Lane Kiffin.
It's got to be Lane Kiffin, right?
It would be a good goof. It'd be fun for recruiting. Yeah, the coach who would be most likely to be okay appearing in a college football themed Cialis bathtub commercial. So what we're talking about is there was a commercial a while back where it would just be a couple in their own bathtubs next to each other.
The commercial at this point.
You think what?
I think we all know the commercial.
I hope so. I don't know. I don't know if people have like memorized every single male enhancement commercial that has been out there. I know you have.
Obviously.
Yeah. I think Kirk Ferentz, there's no price. There's absolutely no price. But if you're talking about the future of Iowa football depends on it, maybe
Kirk,
he reconsiders.
we need you to take one for the team, Kirk.
Yeah, you just stick to the script, do your thing, go out a conquering hero.
Solid Verbal.
Yeah.
At gmail.com, our website, solidverbal.com. Hit follow, hit subscribe if you enjoyed this episode.
Yeah.
And want more like it. There's much more to come where this came from, we promise you, as we make the turn into the latter half of June, the early part of July. That is preview territory. The season is getting awfully big in the window. Verballers.com is where you can go for bonus episodes, ad-free episodes, and all the bonus perks we are working on in the lab right now for the season ahead. So much, much, much more to come. Dan Rubenstein, I'm glad we got to unpack this issue, these issues together on this episode.
Of course.
We will be back a few days' time from now. Talk more college football. Stay tuned for that. For that guy over there, Dan Rubenstein. For myself, Ty Hildenbrandt. Enjoy your day. Stay solid.
Peace.